to all the people that, jeering that I was sent to prison, think it's a good thing, think it's funny, hope that they broke me while I was in there, but I'm here to tell you that they didn't.
Have you been Keir Starmer's political prisoner?
Absolutely. Different officers do it different ways, but they can really hurt you if they want to, and they decided on that day they were going to really hurt me, and I mean really hurt me.
Lucy Connolly.
Hi.
380 days in prison for a tweet written in the heat of the moment. You've been described as Keir Starmer's political prisoner, the poster girl for two-tier justice in authoritarian Britain. That's quite a heavy load for a wife, mum and childminder from Northampton who collects Emma Bridgewater china. Lucy, how are you feeling? You've been free woman for 24 hours.
Yeah, I'm doing okay. I wasn't really believing it until I saw it. I obviously don't trust the system, so I was thinking, I'll believe that this is my release date when, I knew that was my release date from the beginning, so it was not a surprise. I did, all my time.
Yeah.
But I knew that there really wasn't any other way they could keep me in there, but I don't trust the system.
We communicated. You said, I think they'd keep me in here forever if they could.
I do actually
Why?
believe that. I don't know. I would never understand. As you said yourself, I am just a woman from Northampton living in a 3-bed semi that worked as a childminder. A husband is an engineer. Okay, he was a counsellor, but that people forget that's almost like a second job. His first job was an engineer, as a father, as a husband. We are nobodies. We are not known to anybody. So I will never understand how it got to this. And, as I said to you, there's people that have done things far worse and people wouldn't be able to name them, but they'd know my name. And I just find it all really, really bizarre. The whole thing bizarre.
Before we go back to the Southport massacre and the tweet that started this nightmare for you, I wanted to get your opinion on this recent case. Some people have said it's similar to yours. Ricky Jones, who was a Labour councillor during that Southport riot period, he addressed a protest. He said disgusting Nazi fascists should all have their throats cut. Ricky Jones has just been found not guilty of encouraging violent disorder. He was held on a lesser charge, while you, Lucy, got 31 months in jail for a crime that was only online. Is that an example of two-tier justice?
I think it is. However, I'm pleased that the justice system did work for Ricky Jones, and I'm, glad that he was able to get bail and he was able to seek, good legal advice and, have time to stop and think about how he was going to plea and all of those things. I wasn't, given that luxury. I don't advocate that we should be throwing anyone in jail or for saying, he did, as I did, he said something that he shouldn't have done. It was silly. Does it really make him a criminal? Should we be putting people like him and I in prison? Absolutely not.
I want to take you back now to the 29th of July last year. You were at home doing your childminding, 6 or 7 little kids running around that back garden room, all the chaos of that. What sort of ethnic background were the children running around in your house?
Most of my children, in the 11 years that I've been childminding, I looked after way less white British children than I have of children of, immigrants. Most of my children are born in Britain. I have a couple with Romanian passports or Nigerian passports and stuff. But yeah, I would say 90% of the families that I've worked for over the past 11 years have been of, ethnic backgrounds: Ghanaians, Nigerians, Romanians, Lithuanians, Polish, you name it.
But you had a really great relationship with those people from different foreign backgrounds.
Nearly all of my families, as I said to you earlier, when you look after somebody's children on that level, day in, day out, these people are doctors and dentists and teachers. They're busy people, and they needed someone they can rely on. And you build a relationship with these people. And, one of my families, the Telegraph have written about, I supported their
visa application.
Who did all their paperwork and signed that all off for them, and
Yeah.
you know, supported them, and we need people like them. They were both doctors. They're an amazing family that, you know,
Yeah.
we absolutely should welcome people like them to the UK, because they're just amazing people and have a lot to give.
You found out on that 29th of July there'd been this horrific incident. 3 little girls, Alice, BB and Elsie Dot, had been murdered at a Taylor Swift holiday dance club in Southport, and obviously in those first hours it wasn't very clear. Rumours were swirling online about had it been a migrant or so on. Lucy, what was your reaction when you heard that news?
Oh, I was just so upset, like, and angry beyond belief. You know, like when the red mist is there, and I just can't, and I still can't comprehend how in this day and age we can allow that to happen. How have 3 children gone off to a dance class and their parents never get to pick them up again? I do know how that feels like, because I've lost a child, but you, as somebody that's never lost a child, you cannot even begin to comprehend what those families will go through for the rest of their life. It is just, there's just no words for it, you know. And I was just so upset, you know.
You were quite afraid, I think, because Ray was coming home from work, and he said that unusually you'd bolted the front door.
I'm a bit crazy like that because of things I've gone through. I'm a bit like, the first things I sort of think is, oh gosh, am I going to drop my daughter off at gymnastics on Thursday and some crazy person's going to go in there and do that? Oh, you know, let's just, you have those feelings, don't you? And a lot of my parents did. A lot of my parents were saying similar things. They were really upset and really angry. And one of my parents said, I'm never letting her go to anyone but you and my mum, you know, you just can't trust anyone or anything these days, you know. It really did make people really uncomfortable about, you know, letting their children out of sight. And I know that wasn't just my point of view from as a mother. It was the families I worked for, and that, you know, and I've got lots of friends that were were very upset about the situation and very worried, and were like, and I don't know, I used to get a bit aggy about the front door anyway, because obviously I've got older children. So I keep the front door locked all the time. So they'd go out, and then if they didn't lock the door or something, and, you know, so I used to just barricade the door and obviously you have to make sure.
You were in quite a heightened state.
Absolutely.
And at 8:30 that evening, you were on Twitter and you typed, let me just read this to you. Mass deportation now, set fire to all the effing hotels, full of the bastards for all I care. While you're at it, take the treacherous government and politicians with them. I feel physically sick knowing what these families will now have to endure. If that makes me racist, so be it. Now that's a pretty angry, nasty thing to post. Looking back, what do you think made you write that, and what do you think about it now, what you said?
Of course, it wasn't my finest moment, and I definitely don't advocate violence or burning anything down or anything of the sort. To be honest, it was emotion. Does that make sense to you? I don't know what was going on. I was just so upset and so angry, and just thinking to myself, when will this stop? You know, I was just anger, you know, like, and just, I wasn't thinking rationally. I just typed it out and went, you know, on my way. Do
you think there's something about social media, Twitter in particular, you know, there's a swell of a particular discussion, and that you can find yourself, you know,
definitely,
writing
absolutely.
things that you'd never say that in real life, would you?
No, my mum would not be happy.
Your mum would not be happy. She wouldn't.
No, and it's not something I would ordinarily say. It's not something I would advocate, and it's not me. It really isn't, and people can choose to believe that or not. You know, but people that know me and love me know that isn't me.
People talk about it being racist. Tweet. When I read it again, I thought it wasn't specifically about race. That it was distress about uncontrolled migration, putting children at risk and in jeopardising safety. Is that more?
That was exactly what it was. But I know now, anybody that disagrees with my stance on that, I agree, and that's exactly the point I was coming from. But you know, the amount of people that, for example, on social, you're a racist, you're a bigot, and it's boring now. You know, that I feel that it's lost its meaning as a word now because it's just thrown around, bandied around. So I was just almost like preempting it. Yeah, I know you're going to come back to me and say, oh, you don't like immigrants, you're a racist, this, that, the other. But as you say, it's not about that. It's just about making sure that the people coming into our country are vetted and that, you know, we know that they're safe in society.
And those little children you were looking after that day, maybe only one of them white, English, they were at risk as well, right?
Everybody's children are at risk. It doesn't matter what, you know, a child is a child. It doesn't matter what colour they're from, where they've come from. It's our job as a country to protect our children and the future of our children. And to be honest, I don't think we do a particularly good job of that right now.
No. So you took Harley, lovely German pointer, for a walk. And you, about 3.5 hours later, you obviously thought better of it and you deleted the tweet. What was your thought process then?
Yeah, I just went for a walk, you know, put my AirPods in, took the dog for a few miles and calm myself down. That's my, you know, that's my thing, exercise, go for a run, go for a walk, calm, you know. Yeah. And then I came back and I thought, oh, no, you can't write that. That's really not an okay thing to write. I didn't really mean that, you know, take it down. So that's what I did. I didn't comment on it. I didn't read the comments. I just deleted the post and didn't think much more of it, to be honest.
But somebody had screenshotted it and reported you. So 8 days later, the police came round to the house and they arrested you for inciting racial hatred. Lucy, you said to me, it didn't matter whatever I said, I was a lost cause. They wanted to hammer me. What made you think quite quickly that they wanted to hammer you?
Just the legal advice that I got. He was kind of, that was his advice as well. He was like, they're not playing by the rules of these cases. I've not seen anything like this before. You know, you should never have been. You should never have been remanded, but they have remanded you. I'm going to try and get you bail, but you know, I'm not hopeful. It was just the general consensus across the legal board, solicitors and lawyers and barristers, that these weren't normal circumstances. These cases were being treated different. And they were giving out a lot heftier sentences to people than they ordinarily would. They were remanded people when they wouldn't ordinarily remand them. And then, of course, it's very difficult once you've been remanded to change legal team, to get legal advice, to get other opinions. But coming back to the police, so you're in the police station. Obviously, for someone like you, this is very frightening and alien territory. Do you think, looking back, that you were a bit naive and trusting about the police? Absolutely. You know, we've always been brought up, you know, the police are there to help you, not to stitch you up, and you know. And obviously, I had a solicitor, and I'd gone through the tweet with her prior to my interview, and I'd spoke to her, and her words to me were, when I explained myself and what I meant and what had happened, she said, you know what, Lucy, I think you've put that really eloquently. I think you should go in there and explain yourself to them. No comment, you know. And I think she was thinking at the same time, you know, this is really not, it was just a mistake, an angry mistake. You took it down, you didn't mean it. You're not, you know, this right-wing terrorist. And you've explained yourself really well, so go and do that in there. And obviously I had my interview. It went for, I don't know how long it was, but a while. At no point, you know, my sister was sitting next to me. At no point, you know, she kicked me under the table or nudged me or stopped the interview and say, you know, you're doing yourself no favours there. You know, and she was happy with everything I'd said and whether, you know, and I'd explained to the police what my stance on immigration and illegal, you know, made it quite clear that I know the difference between immigration and illegal immigration. You know, but I feel that was massively twisted and used against me, and I feel that I would have been much better just saying no comment, because they wouldn't have had anything to twist around back on me. So
police gave your statement to the Crown Prosecution Service. Mrs. Connolly doesn't like immigrants. She thinks they are dangerous to children. Did you say that?
Absolutely not. We had a conversation about how I think my words were, I need to get the police interview. I'm well aware of how important immigration is to this country. I'm well aware that if I went to Northampton Hospital right now, if I said I didn't want to be treated by an immigrant, I'd probably be dead. You know, and like I said, some of my families that I work for, you know, they're Nigerian doctors, and I would have them treat me over, you know, they're the most compassionate people I know. So I'm well aware that the country needs immigration. I'm well aware that if we kicked every immigrant out tomorrow, we'd be screwed, So I explained this to them, and I explained it's not immigration that I have an issue with. I have no issue with people's skin colour, race, religion, anything of that. It's simply the fact that these particular group of people are unchecked, and I don't feel that it's safe for our children to be walking the streets with people that we don't know who they are or where they've come from. And I appreciate we've got enough of people that are born in the UK that are, do awful things, but if we can just stop one child, something bad happening to them, that's one. One is too many, isn't it? Even if it's only one and I don't think for 1 minute that every single person coming over on a boat and living in a hotel is a rapist or a murderer. I'm sure the vast majority of them are really, really decent people just wanting to build a better life. But even if there's one or two in there, that's too many for our children.
So on the 4th of August, Sir Keir Starmer, let me quote him to you, "I utterly condemn the far-right thuggery, be in no doubt that those who have participated in violence will face the full force of the law. The police will be making arrests, individuals will be held on remand, charges will follow and convictions will follow. I guarantee you will regret taking part in this disorder, whether directly or those whipping up this action online." Lucy, you were denied bail 6 days after the Prime Minister made that statement. You were a perfect candidate for bail, first-time offender, not a flight risk, but bail was denied. It was denied twice. Lucy, do you think Keir Starmer influenced the way you and others were treated by the criminal justice system?
100%, yes. When he made his speech in the beginning, this is before I was even arrested, I thought it was very divisive. It was very much, oh, well, if you're bothered about children being murdered, you're a right wing, you're far right. That's not, people are going to be and are entitled to be upset, deeply upset about the unnecessary death of children. And let's not forget the other children that didn't lose their lives and what they now have to go through and what they went through. Nobody should have to go through that. So it's completely plausible that people are going to be upset and angry about the situation. So why not just say, listen, release the facts around the case. I understand in some cases they can't name people for legal and everybody's entitled to a fair trial, and I stand by that. I'm jumping a bit here, but that's another thing. Even had I gone to trial, it was so prejudiced by that point, by the government, by the police, by the press. I don't even think I would have had a fair trial because people have been told stuff already that actually wasn't true.
We should add at this point that statement the police gave to the CPS, your family and solicitor challenged it, and they did in fact
change it.
Yeah. But by that stage it was
too late. The BBC and the Sky and all of those people, they'd already reported that I hated immigrants and I said they were a danger to the children, and I had several racist tweets on my Twitter, which just wasn't true.
No.
But the damage had been done by then. So even had I have pled not guilty and gone to trial, my case would have been seriously prejudiced.
Yeah. And that point you're making was that the Prime Minister, who had an opportunity to unite the country
exactly. Why did he not just say, look, this is horrendous. We completely understand why you're all upset and angry. We know there's an issue. We know you're all upset about the immigration levels. We are going to work really hard with you all, with the country, and we're going to find a solution. Instead of saying anybody that's upset about this is a far right, terrorist, and you will be dealt with. Yeah. That was basically what he said.
And you also said to the police, I'm just so shocked. People appear to be more bothered by my political views than by children being murdered. Lucy, do you think it suited the authorities to deflect attention away from the savagery of the murder of the children onto people like you?
Yeah, and I stand by that. I cannot for the life of me. I would not be more offended by an offensive tweet than I would be upset about a child losing their life, let alone 3. I don't get that mentality. You can be upset about what I wrote, but I don't understand that you would be more upset about that than the death of children. And that seemed to be the case. They seemed to be more bothered what I'd said than why I'd said it and what led to me saying that.
Lucy, you're a fighter. I know you're a fighter. So people will ask, why did you plead guilty to the offence of distributing material with the intention of stirring up racial hatred? Why not hold your nerve and plead not guilty?
Because I'd been remanded. I didn't know how long. You know, I've met women that have been on remand 2 years and are still waiting for a trial. The courts are so far behind. I'm not sure in my case they would have been in any hurry to get my case to trial. And I have a daughter that needs me. You know, I'm a stay-home mummy. She's had me there her whole life, and all I was thinking, what is my quickest route to her? Yeah. Like, so I felt that I wasn't going to be successful in any way, whatever way I turned in this. So at the time, all I was thinking is, right, they're going to throw the book at me for this. They've made that quite clear. They've done it to other people. What is my quickest route home? And after discussions with my lawyer about how long of a sentence he thought I'd got, this time I'd served remand, he also told me I would get tagged. It was kind of decided that the sentence they were expecting me to get, plus, you know, HDC tag, I'd be home at kind of Christmas time.
Yeah. Your lawyer pretty much said, if you plead guilty, you'll be home by Christmas.
You know, if you don't plead guilty, you'll lose your credit. You'll get your credit if you plead guilty. And so at that point, all I was thinking about was my family, and all I was thinking about was my quickest route home. At that point, I'd passed caring whether I was going to get a criminal record or found. That didn't matter anymore. All I was thinking about is how I was going to get home to my child. You know, I've lost one child. When I don't want to be away from her. You know, I can't get that time back.
I think what people don't understand is that you're not just waiting for this stuff to unfold. You're in prison, right? Which is, for someone like you, this is a very alien, scary environment, and you're not able to get lots of the good advice that people on the outside, a number of barristers were saying to Ray, your husband, tell Lucy she mustn't plead guilty. But you were looking around this prison, presumably thinking, oh my God, I could be in here for 2 years waiting for trial. Yeah,
and I'm thinking, oh, she'll be 15 by the time I'm out, and all, you know, and that's all that was all that was ever going through the dog will be dead by the time I get home, you know, all this crazy stuff was going through my head. I can't be away from home that long. I need to be with my family. So by the time it got to that point, I really didn't care it got to the point where I actually didn't care what I was pleading. I just wanted to be home with my family, and we spoke about it, and that seemed the quickest route home. So
we subsequently found out that Lord Hermer, who's the Attorney General, he had to approve your prosecution. You appear to have pleaded guilty to a higher charge, to the 1A, which was inciting serious violence. I'll ask you about that in a minute. But you've got Lord Hermer, Starmer, and other, you know, former Director of Public Prosecutions. To what extent do you think this whole denied bail rapidly shunted along this conveyor belt towards a guilty plea? Is there an element of coercion of people?
Absolutely. Everybody is entitled to a fair trial. Everybody, the justice system should serve everybody the same, but it doesn't. We didn't get all the same rights. Ricky Jones is a perfect example of that. He did say something violent. He did say something he shouldn't have said. As I've said, do I think he should have gone to prison? Absolutely not. But he was, you know, bailed. I wasn't. So he was able to sit round a table, and Ray has always maintained to me, used to say, Lucy, if you were able to sit round a table with the people that I'm able to sit round, you would never have gone guilty. And we had several arguments, you know, because I used to say to him, well, it's all well for you to say this to me, but you're not the one sitting in prison away from our child. I am. So, you know, and if Ray had had of his own way, I would have never have gone guilty. Because he was obviously speaking to Adam and lawyers and things behind the scene, but I wasn't able to do that. I was just going on second-hand information, plus what my, you know, lawyer was saying to me at the time, and it was conflicting information, you know, so I didn't have that opportunity.
Ray said something very sad to me. Lucy basically had to admit she was the person she was the opposite of. Now, I know you and your two sisters were raised by your lovely mum, who's just through there in the kitchen, and she described herself to me as old-fashioned Labour, and you and the other girls were brought up to be very much non-racist.
Absolutely.
And was it painful to be demonised as Tory councillor's racist wife?
Absolutely. I don't want to walk down the street and people think I'm a racist. Being a racist is not a good trait, We shouldn't be judging people by the colour of the skin, their religious, the creed, any of that. We judge people on who they are, the merit of who they are. We've never been brought up to, and as I've said many a time, I've looked after many a children that are from all over the place, and I've quite literally treated them as I treat my own children and loved them and protected them like I do my own. It doesn't matter where they come from, they're children.
No. So it was very stinging. Do you think that being Tory councillor's wife was different from Ricky Jones' Labour councillor?
I might change my name to Deed Poll instead of Tory councillor's wife. I'm sick of hearing it, and it's really, what's the word? We're so women and their own people now, and feminism and all of this. Why am I being linked to him? He did nothing wrong. He didn't even know I'd sent that tweet. No. Why is he being demonised? Why is any politics coming into it? I said what I said through anger and being upset. Nothing to do with politics. I would have said the same if another government was in power. And let's not forget they actually were. There was another government in power when the lead up to this and the failings to this case. So it wasn't a case of it's all Labour's fault. It's not.
But I think would there be an element that the media quite enjoyed the fact that Ray was a Tory councillor?
Absolutely, completely. I just, as I say, I'll never understand why I got the airtime that I did. I remember when I put my plea in, and I was on Video Link, and obviously it's just down the corridor from where the house block is at the prison, so it's not a long walk, just walk across. And I'd put my plea in, I'd left, I'd gone back to my room, Sky News was on, breaking news, Lucy Connolly, and my face was all over the news, and I was like, I don't get it. And my lawyer said, I've never seen so many press at a plea hearing or a sentencing hearing. He says, I don't understand, I don't get it. So I don't think I will ever understand why I was made so much bigger than anybody else that were involved in anything to do with the Southport, be it online, and there's people have pointed out, there were still lots of people in prison that put stuff online that absolutely shouldn't be there either. These people are not criminals.
Perhaps it was the opportunity to use the very attractive police mugshot of you again.
Oh yes, that one. I've never forgiven anybody that ever showed that mugshot.
No, I know, you've said this to me. So let's go to the sentencing. Justice Melbourne Inman was very harsh in his remarks about you, and some people would say quite political. He said it's the strength of our society that it is both diverse and inclusive. There's always a very small minority of people who seek an excuse to use violence and disorder, causing injury, damage, loss and fear to wholly innocent members of the public. And sentences for those who incite racial hatred and disharmony in our society are intended to both punish and deter. Now, I've read a lot about the remarks and the charges. The judge didn't give much, if any, weight to your mitigation. So you were of previous good character. You had a pile of wonderful references from immigrant parents saying Lucy's the kindest British person we've met. She's gone the extra mile for us, and we're from Nigeria, Bangladesh. And you had lost a child of your own in 2011 due to medical neglect, which had left you with post-traumatic stress disorder. Lucy, how did you feel when Justice Inman said 31 months custodial sentence?
I was really shocked. I was not expecting, the discussions we'd had, it was a high sentence, and obviously I'd pleaded the guilty plea to get my 25% off. And he said, if you'd have gone guilty and you'd have been found, if you'd have gone not guilty and been found guilty at trial, you would have got this. So I'm going to start at this point. Surely that's the whole point of going guilty though, isn't it? So that you don't get to trial and it works in your favour. But it didn't work in my favour because he just went from that starting point anyway.
Yeah.
And then, brought it down but so technically I got 4 years, I can't exactly remember. And I'm not going to lie, as soon as he started with his speech, my kind of eyes rolled to the back of my head and I thought, oh, here we go.
Right, yeah.
Straight out of Starmer's mouth, that's what I thought when he started speaking.
So I'm going to be made an example of.
Yeah, I knew that. And to be honest, I didn't hear a lot of what he said. And I tell you another really bizarre thing about that situation. I've never seen Judge Inham. So when the camera was set up in the court, I was facing the legal team and the judge was coming in and out, and I've never laid eyes on him. So when he was saying all of this, he never looked me in the face. And I find that quite, if you're sentencing somebody, surely you look at them and you say, you've done this, this is da-da-da-da-da, you're having this. He didn't. I found that really quite strange, that the camera was turned away. I'd never set eyes on him. He could probably obviously see me, I'm assuming. But when he read that out, he wasn't talking to me because I couldn't see him.
He knew you had a 12-year-old daughter.
He did.
Lucy, I want to talk about Harry, because I do feel he's a big part of this story. Harry was your son, your little boy, just 19 months old when he died after a series of medical mishaps, to say the least. What was he like?
Oh, he was a dream. He didn't sleep, but he was always so happy, and he really was a joy. I mean, both our kids were actually, when they were both really happy, independent babies and toddlers, and he just loved life. Everything was great to him. He was like the happiest little thing, and he brought everyone so much joy. He never cried, had the odd tantrum, I guess, but yeah, he was a good boy.
He became very ill, and I understand you took him to the hospital on 5 successive days, and doctors said that you were overbearing.
Just said it was a tummy bug and I was wrong, and he'd be fine. Take him home, give him juice. He's not that ill.
And what, on the 5th successive day you took him home, and Ray said you woke up in the small hours, and what had happened then?
He'd passed away. Ray found him, and then from there really. So he was in our room on a mattress next to the bed, because obviously he'd been so poorly, and I didn't want him in his own room because he was being sick and stuff as well. So Ray woke up to check on him, and he'd passed away, and I think he'd been gone a while.
Ray said that Ray said he hasn't been able to cry since, except he cried once for you. And Ray said, I shouldn't be getting upset. Ray said that you were on the phone to the 999-911 and you were screaming at him to do CPR on the baby. Is that right?
Yeah, because that's what it was too late. And he knew it. Ray had got him, so he knew it was too late, but I wanted him to try, So.
Yeah. And obviously that was an immense shock from which neither of you will ever really recover. How often do you think about Harry?
Oh, every day. And then some days I have this panic where I think I haven't thought of him that day. But then I go, oh yeah, I have, because I thought about him when, when I was in prison, all my photos on the wall, there was just as many of him as there was, my daughter and my family and all of that. You've been to our house. He's still very much a part of our house and a part of our life.
He's everywhere, his lovely face. Your mum said to me, Lucy really proved her mettle after Harry died. She said she had to fight for him to get the truth about why he died, because the truth never would have come out, because the hospital wanted to brush it under the carpet, saying it's just one of those things, babies do die. Now, literally within 48 hours of Harry's death, you were into the hospital to demand his notes because you thought they might try to destroy them. And you said to your parents, I will bloody well prove I'm right and the doctors were wrong. And your mum said she did. So you had years of tribunals.
Yeah, it was about a year. I knew that he shouldn't be dead. I knew that he was iller than what they thought he was, and I knew that he could. I just knew that he could have been saved had they have listened and had he have had the right treatment.
Mainly he was dehydrated.
Dehydrated and kidney failure. No. Nobody should be dying in this day and age of those things. They're really easily rectifiable. And I just knew, and they were really cagey. The very first people that contacted us after he died was the litigation team. Well, that rang alarm bell straight away, doesn't it? Why are you contacting me? But obviously they've done nothing wrong at this point, and they maintained that, they did everything right, they followed nice guidelines, they did this, they did that. And all I wanted to know was how it happened. I know that not for 1 minute those doctors thought, oh, let's kill this baby this week. Of course they didn't. But the fact of the matter is their failures did kill him. So instead of opening up a proper investigation and saying, do you know what, we are going to find out what happened, A, to give you some peace and some answers, and B, to make sure this never happens again. Yeah. But no, they don't. They deny till they die, don't say anything. We did everything right. We're getting independent reports to say that, you know, we're brilliant, and everybody knew that wasn't the case. So it wasn't until inquest, they maintained this all the way along. And then when we got to inquest, it was, you know, I had a really good lawyer. Yeah. He was a bit priceless. He was brilliant. And the coroner's independent expert, a doctor from Leicester, listened to the evidence, and he had nothing but contempt for those doctors afterwards. And she obviously ruled about 13 failures and 4 windows of lost opportunity to save him. Yeah. And then the hospital held their hands up and apologised. But they hadn't done until then. And had I not fought so hard, I probably would never have had those answers, because they didn't volunteer them.
And you were by the end of the case, you were quite heavily pregnant.
Yeah, so his inquest was like kind of, I think, end of April, and she was due in July.
So she was a rainbow baby.
She was a rainbow baby. She's my rainbow baby.
She's a rainbow baby. How old would Harry be now?
He'd be 16 in September. It'd be his 16th this year.
Wow. When you called me from prison, you said, yeah, some days it's bad and I sob, other days I laugh because it's so ridiculous. But remember, Alison, the worst thing in the world has already happened to me. Did Harry help you to endure this ordeal?
I just think that I thought to myself, and Ray as well, that we've been through worse. I mean, being in prison was horrific. This whole thing is horrific, but it's doesn't come close to losing a child, not even close. So as long as she was okay and everyone else is okay, we can fix this. We can come out of this. And when you lose a child, you can't fix that.
No, that's forever.
That's forever. This isn't forever. It's just a small, you know.
So you're taken from the court after this deafening sentence in a prison van to Peterborough. Someone like you wouldn't normally end up in jail. What were your initial impressions of being inside?
Actually, I was terrified when I went there, and I was sobbing. And as soon as I walked in the door, they were like, no, don't cry. The SO that works on reception is lovely. And he's like, please don't cry. It's not as bad. It's not what you think here. It's not what you think. And I was like, oh. Like, and then I kind of walked in and I was just like, oh, it looks more like a university than a prison. It wasn't very prison-like when you first walk into reception and stuff. And then I met this lovely officer, Lel, and I was just hysterical. She's like, calm down, what did you do? And I told her, and she was just like that. Oh. You know, she was very like, oh.
So I should say that a lot of what you call the girls, the other prisoners, when you told them that you were in for a tweet, what did they say?
They didn't believe me. Nobody believed me. And part of me is a little part of me is glad that the press picked it up and went so heavy on it, because in prison, if people don't believe you and what you're in for, you can imagine what you get branded as.
Right.
So if you say you're in for something quite unbelievable, people say, no, there must be this, that or the other. And they're just trying to hide what they really are. And, you know, I've seen other girls have to get their paperwork out and show other girls, you know, what they're in for, because they're like, oh no, they must be this, they must be that. Yeah. And nobody wants to be branded as that. It's not funny, but, you know, that's one thing people aren't very forgiving about in prison. And I don't blame them.
So the girls thought you were pretty posh at first.
They did. Yeah. You know, it did. Yeah. But they were, even when I went back to Peterborough in June, some of the girls that I'd never met before, they were like, you're really down to earth. And I just laughed and I said, what was you expecting? Because the press has just built up this Tory wife, this, that, the other, and, you know, you must be rich, you must be posh, you must come, you know, been born with a silver spoon in your mouth. And, you know, and I really did my best to try not to judge these girls, because some of their stories are pretty horrific and a lot of them shouldn't be in there themselves.
And you quite rapidly took quite a few under your wing.
I did.
Yeah. And Ray said to me,
Babies.
I think one of my favourite lines from the whole story was when Ray said, I can't understand why the prison doesn't want to get rid of Lucy because she writes all the letters of complaints
I do.
for the other
I
girls.
did.
You
Because obviously
you became you were like citizen advice.
Yeah, some of these girls love them. They're not very good at articulating themselves, and sometimes, you know, you get very angry in prison because sometimes you feel like you're banging your head against a brick wall. Life doesn't work the same in prison. Everything's so slow. You need something doing, and it's you know, it takes forever. And then if you're not very good at reading and writing, you're going to struggle to write a complaint or write a letter to the judge or write a letter to your housing people. So yeah, I helped a lot of people do things like that and wrote letters for them. And
even in prison, though, there was evidence that you were not to be treated as a normal person. So after a couple of weeks, some prison officers said, oh, you're nothing like we were told you were going to be, Lucy.
Yeah.
What did they mean by that?
So apparently when I was due to come in, when, you know, the police ring, I don't know how I'm not sure how it works, you know, the prison transport comes to the police station and picks you up and takes you to the prison. So I'm assuming that the police and the prison have some liaison with either themselves or the driver of the van to tell you know who you are, etc., etc. So apparently the prison had been told, you know, that I was aggressive and to watch out for me. I was a bit loopy and I might be aggressive and all of this, that and the other, which I've never been aggressive to anyone in my life. When I was arrested, I wasn't even cuffed. I was really polite and to the police and never aggressive. So I'm really unsure. So then I was standing at the gate one day waiting to go up to the med-secure, I think, and the same officer that was on reception that spoke to me initially and was like, made me feel really at ease, was there. And she said, do you know what, you're nothing like how we were told you were going to be. And I said, oh, what do you mean? And she told me that what they'd been told. And I said, oh, wow. I said, well, I don't know why you've been told that. And then one of the other guys that worked on the wing, he was like, yeah, you're nothing like how we thought you were going to be. And I just laughed. So they've obviously, you know...
So that there was a sort of demonising of you that continued. So this phrase, political prisoner, that's a very strong term, something we associate with totalitarian regimes. But it did feel like you were being treated differently, worse than other prisoners, because you were this Tory councillor's racist wife. From November last year, you were eligible for different kinds of leave, were you not? Can
Childcare rottles, yeah.
Childcare rottles, and that's the right of temporary leave. So what happened when you applied for these things?
So as soon as I filled in the form, my OMU worker came and I have to say I've said to you, he's great. My OMU worker at Peterborough was fab. He was always, you know, in my corner. And he came with a form and I filled it out, and apparently he took it back, put it on the desk, and someone went, well, she's not going to get those. And he went, why not? She's entitled to them, you know, type thing. And it was just a fight from then on in, and it was quite apparent quite early that they were not going to sign my rottles off and that they'd been blocked. And then I had a probation meeting in January, a video link with outside probation, and my inside probation officer was there as well, and she kind of said to me, oh, are you going to do rottles, Lucy? Like it was a given, you know, like, because obviously outside probation have to support that as well and think that they can manage your risk in the community. So they have a say in it as well. And she just said it like it was a given, you know, you're going to do your rottles. And Paul went,
This is the probation officer.
Yeah, there's a bit of a problem there. And I said, yeah, that's a bit of a sore subject. He said, they've been blocked.
So this guy, the probation officer you like very much, first of all, he said you shouldn't even be in here. And then he said he'd worked for many, many years in the probation service. He'd never seen anything like it. And he said, it is political, Lucy.
Yeah, I think he thought that had it not been married to who I'd been married to, I would have got a lot less a sentence than what I did get.
And just to explain to people watching this, you were surrounded by women who were being given these kinds of leave. They were done for death by dangerous driving, for very serious crimes, but they were allowed out. And you, who had a 12-year-old daughter and a husband with a bone marrow condition, constantly told no.
Yeah, that's right. Well, and I watched other women, not that I'm saying that it shouldn't have been given their leave and their tag. That's not what I'm saying. I think they should have been, but yeah, I was treated very differently to them.
And some of the reasons that I've seen say things like media interest.
Yeah, that was their first excuse. The media interest is too high. But then if you look at the Ministry of Justice guidelines on the reasons you should or shouldn't, what they go by, why you should give someone wattle, why you shouldn't give someone wattle, doesn't mention anything about that. That's not a legitimate reason not to give somebody a childcare wattle, because somebody might take a photo of them or something.
Were they it strikes me they had made you notorious and then they punished you for the notoriety.
Yeah, absolutely. That's how I felt. And I have to say, not by the officers that work in the prisons. Most of the officers are fab. And they're very impartial and they just treat everybody the same. But it was coming from higher up.
Yeah, they were all along. We felt a finger on the scales. Yeah. Lucy, I was astonished to hear that you were visited in prison by Prevent, the counter-terrorism group. What did they want?
I had a bit of a to-do with the girl who happened to be Asian when I first got to Drake Hall Prison. I was talking to another girl and we were talking about our children, and this particular girl that I was talking to was saying, "Oh, well, I get tag soon, will you get tag?" So I was literally just explaining.
So tag is being able to leave the prison with an electronic.
Yeah, so home detention curfew. Yeah. So partway through your sentence, instead of serving it in jail, you serve it at home on curfew. But because of my offence, they said I wasn't eligible. That's actually not true. I was eligible by law, but presumed unsuitable. That's how they word it. So I was just having a conversation with this other girl about why I couldn't get tag. And obviously said, because unfortunately my offence has got racism in it, so that falls under that bracket, da-da-da-da-da. And so with that, this other girl who was Asian jumps off the freezer in the coffee shop that she was sitting on and just verbally attacks me. Racism in 2025, I hate people like you, da-da-da-da-da. And she'd obviously heard things about me because she was like, these people coming in on boats, they're legal. And I was a bit taken aback. I was like, wow, where's all this come from? I wasn't even talking about boats. I was talking about the reason I can't have tag. But in prison, I didn't really have any run-ins with anyone apart from that. And I was, I treated everybody with respect and then me. But you can't back down, if that makes sense. If someone's getting in your face or they think they can bully you, you have to stand your ground in prison. It can be not a very nice playground, and you don't have to be mean, but you do have to, be firm and fair, and say, I'm not standing for that. Otherwise you will get taken advantage of in prison. So yeah, I just said, why are you talking to me like this? Firstly, I'm not racist. Secondly, I don't know where you're getting your information from, but let's just leave it at that and agree to disagree. Then she carried on, well, people that come in boats, they are legal. Our people came in boats and they worked their asses off for you people. I was like, wow. And I just ignored her and I just walked off, and I'm not getting into this with her, uneducated fool. That's what I was thinking. I'm not having this argument with you. Walked off. But this particular girl in prison is known for being a bully. She's known for being a big mouth. When I went back to my house where I lived, crying at the end of it, that the girls knew whose name I was going to say before I'd even said it. Yeah. Oh yeah, I've had she thinks she's this, she's a bully, she's that. And the stories I heard about this particular girl throughout the prison whilst I was there, she was a known bully. She was a known, she was on a 10-year, I don't know what she'd done. She was on a 10-year sentence, so she was hardly an angel herself, was she?
So Prevent came, were they interested in you being far right?
Yeah, and what I'd said to her, that for whatever reason it had been perceived as racist, and that I was, being racist towards this particular girl. And I was a bit perplexed. I was like, I don't really know why you're here. She was the one that was aggressive to me and started on me. I just stuck up for myself and told her to quit it. And I think it was because towards the end of the argument, she said, I'm a person of colour. What's that got to do with anything? I can quite clearly see that, your race, but I don't understand why you feel the need to tell me. So I don't think she liked that. But it was not, so I think she must have I think that she put in what they call a dearth, like if you feel that you've been discriminated against.
But you were cleared of that.
Yes, and then there was another investigation into the death because it just wasn't how it was said to be. I wasn't saying she was, like I said, she was the one. And I maintained all along, like, look at her record and look at mine. I've never even had so much as a telling off in prison. She's constantly round with people, bullying people.
You were generally a model prisoner who should have been eligible for all the various perks and so on, and yet you were repeatedly denied. Yeah. And you do think that was coming from a higher authority?
Yeah, I do. Yeah.
And how high do you think it went? Do you think the governor was being leaned on?
I've no idea, because obviously the prisons to kind of, I do think the governors were being leaned on. Or they felt that they couldn't grant it because they would be, perceived as not standing with the government or that kind of thing.
Do you think there's an enthusiasm, Lucy, for someone like you to be far-right extremist? Yes,
I think it fits their narrative really well, as opposed to saying, she was just a mum that was upset that shouldn't have said what she said. They have to, but why do they have to give everybody a label?
Back in May, I was there in the Court of Appeal when the judges chose not to reduce your sentence. They said it was not manifestly excessive, even though I think by that stage the majority of British people thought it was clearly ludicrous. You were very upset, I know. You said to me the judges were cruel bastards because you wanted to get home to be with your daughter. What do you think of a legal system that keeps a mother who poses no risk to the public behind bars? And more generally, how many women in jail with you should be there?
Oh God, I'd say 80%. I could comfortably say that I would let 80% of the women, and I'm talking about female estate now, I don't know what the situation of the men's estate. You could comfortably let 80% of those women out the door and they would not be a risk to the public. They've ended up in there through circumstance, through hard times, not the right help, and it's true, we're all one mistake away from a prison sentence.
And you said to me you thought that a lot of the women were in there were covering up for their men.
I think so. You come across a lot of women that are in there, and there's a man involved somewhere with domestic violence, coercion. There was a lot of, in Peterborough certainly, there was a lot of young girls that were on conspiracy charges to drugs that you just know had been sucked in by these big dealers, promising them the earth, this, that, the other, getting in their heads. And
so with what they spent on putting you in prison for just 12.4 months, what would that money be better spent on?
Housing, mental health, rehab. We're letting people out of prison homeless and wondering why 3 weeks later they're back.
Yeah.
It's a no-brainer, isn't it?
You said to me, it struck me, you said, we're like rats in a box.
We are.
Is that how good?
Absolutely.
That's what it's like.
It doesn't do any. I do not see what was achieved by sending me and the likes of me to prison other than a massive cost to the taxpayer. What's been achieved from that?
When you were back at Peterborough Prison, there was an episode not long ago, really unpleasant episode, where you were expecting to go to the enhanced wing, a better quality of wing because of your record, and they announced you were going to quite a dodgy, I'm not sure what's the polite way of saying it, like the Wild West wing.
Well, it's got and it's not come from me, it's got all kinds of nicknames upstairs, the Bronx, Beirut, the Twos, it's a bit of a different world to downstairs for various reasons, but it's almost like two different jails.
So when you were told you were going there and you were expecting to go to the nicer place, you said,
I said, no, I'm not.
I'm not going. And then what happened?
And I said it wasn't like a bullshit, but I said, no, I'm going to E1. That's what I've been told. It's on the board and everything. No, you can't go there because we've done a security check and there's intel on you. And I was like, really? I find that really, really hard to believe. I said, what intel? We can't tell you. I said, well, I'm going on a visit now, so I can't pack my stuff and go anywhere. And, even the officer that was coming to get me said, well, she's going on a visit now. This other officer's trying to thrust bags at me and tell me to pack my stuff up moving. And if I didn't do it, she'd do it for me. I said, well, I'm going on my visit now. She said, well, I'm going to nick you then for disobeying a direct order. I went, do what you like. And went on my visit. Came back and she had nicked me, and there was no talking about it. I asked her to get me a senior officer to talk about the discussion. She wouldn't do it. She said, I've nicked you of her refusing to move. I said, you know, is there no discussion to be had about this? Because this is not what I was told, and I want to know what this intel is. Can't tell you. So with that, I went to my nick-in the next day, was told by one of the governors that, you know, I thought I was better than everybody else and I'm no better than anyone in that prison, and I will be going to A2, and that's that. So, you know.
And then they forcibly moved you.
They did. So I went back to the house block, and I was followed by quite a lot of officers from the segregation unit, because that's where all the nickings happen. And all of a sudden, as they opened the doors to the house block, there was just all of these officers and the nurse. Now, they only get the nurse when they're intending on what we call in prison bending someone up, forcibly moving somebody. Different officers do it different ways, but they can really hurt you if they want to. And they decided on that day they were going to really hurt me, and I mean really hurt me. I mean, I've got a lot of witnesses saying it was horrendous to witness, and the more I screamed, the more they hurt me. Completely unnecessary. I was sitting on the floor crying, saying I didn't want to go upstairs, and with that they just sit on me. And
so
handcuffs, arms behind my back, bent my arm and pushed my elbows further up my back and further up my back and further up my back, and it really, really did hurt. The handcuffs were on so tight they couldn't get them off, and there was all bruises all up my arms, and I need to go to a chiropractor about my back and my shoulder because they hurt me so badly, and it was completely unnecessary.
Might they have been trying to provoke a reaction from you? I
do wonder, but I also know that the officers that did it had never had any interaction with me, and I'm quite confident that had the manager have gone to the officers that do know me well there and have had a lot of interaction with me and said, go and bend Lucy up, they'd have said, absolutely not, what on earth are you bending her up for, just talk to her, you know. And after it happened, people were like, no, they didn't do that, nobody believed me, you know, like, they bent you up, you know, like everyone was just like, in the whole prison was just like really shocked, because I'm the last person they'd expect, you know, to get bent up and dragged upstairs, because...
So massively disproportionate, but then we could say that almost all of your treatment throughout this year has been...
Well, I think so,
extremely disproportionate. In your evidence to the Court of Appeal, you said that whenever anyone expresses any doubts or fears about immigration, they're always called racist to shut the conversation down. But you said you should be allowed to be angry. They demonise those of us who are angry that our children aren't protected. I don't know how much you've seen of these pink protests that we've seen.
I haven't yet. No, it's not something, funnily enough, that's been displayed on the mainstream media, on BBC and things like that. You're limited in prison to what channels you've got. So you haven't got YouTube, you haven't got GB News and all of those things that do, you know, both sides of the argument. So but I will be looking into that. I'm very interested to see what these ladies are up to.
Lots of mums and grandmas, and what struck me about these protests outside the migrant hostels is they are singing from the Lucy Connolly hymn sheet, and they are saying, you can't call us far right, we're just concerned. And they also basically say what you say, if this makes us racist, so be it. So do you feel now some change that you, I think, have been in the forefront of shifting the fact that shouting far right at people, mums and parents, isn't going to work anymore? Well,
I hope so, because like I said, as much as I agree that I shouldn't have said what I said, I'm also not the person that I've been portrayed to be. And neither, like you said, are these grandmas and these mums that just want their children to be able to be safe. We all should be able to let our kids walk out of the door in the morning and be as confident as we can be that they're going to get to school safely, that they're going to be able to do their dance class without something horrendous happening. We just want to know that the government are doing everything they can to make sure our children are safe. That's all they're asking. I don't think they're asking a lot, to be honest.
No. Your concern throughout has been for your daughter, who recently turned 13.
She did.
And I know you went. What did you go? First thing you got out of prison. What did you go and buy her yesterday?
Yeah, we went to Pandora.
Of course.
So she got her bracelet and a necklace that she wanted, because she did get birthday presents, and Ray took her to Bicester Village to get her Lululemon stuff that she wanted, and she got lots of other bits. But I just felt like I wanted to buy her something from me. You know, it's her 13th birthday. And, you know, it's a charm bracelet, it's something you can add to and keep safe, isn't it? So
do you think when you look at the judicial system and the Prime Minister making these remarks and basically railroading people like you into jail, what has he done to your young teenager?
I just think he's also undermined her trust in the police and the system growing up, because like I've told you, my mum, you know, we were always brought up that the police were there to help you, the government are there to help you, you know, and she's not going to think that now, is she? She's going to think, well, hang on a minute, they put my mum in prison. And, you know, a lot of people have said to me she had lots of issues from her friends. She really hasn't. They're like, your mum's in prison? Oh, that's stupid. You know, like... From as far as I can make out, she hasn't. She has had her struggles, but I don't think she's had any kind of backlash from the other children about it.
No, and you did have some of the little kids from the childminding came to visit you.
They did. Yeah. We had a couple of my families come and visit me.
And what did they think?
I don't know. The older boys were really funny, so they were like more just like, "What colour's your bedroom?" We're like, "What do they give you?" If they could have got over there and had a look, they would have done. And then the younger ones, they didn't really get it. Their parents tried to explain, you know. I think one of my parents just said, you know, Lucy said something naughty, you know, so, but he's not really old enough to understand. It was just like a big village hall, I guess, with some toys in it to him, and they brought the baby. And
Lucy, recently we've seen the US criticising Britain for the erosion of free speech in our country. Tomorrow I can disclose now with you that a senior representative from the Trump administration is coming here to this house to talk to you about being jailed for a hate crime. The Free Speech Union championed your cause, they funded your legal action. Would you now like to get involved in the fight for free speech?
Oh, absolutely. And I'll be forever grateful to the likes of Toby and the Free Speech and yourselves and everybody that backed me and said, no, this is wrong. Because I wouldn't have got through this, I don't think, without the support of good people, knowing that I had their backing. And free speech is exceedingly important in the UK, and it is something that seemingly is diminishing. I appreciate that you can't just go around saying exactly what you want when you want, but really trying to putting people in prison for something they said. That's
you have got a huge amount of support, and had a crowdfunder which has raised nearly 160,000 so far. I know you're hugely grateful. I have to say, people keep sending me checks for Lucy, so I may hand those over. I'll think about it. You know? I'll think about it. It's a few £100. I'll buy you a couple of mojitos. It's been suggested you could even go into politics. One suggestion I quite liked was that Lucy Connolly could run for reform against Home Secretary Vet Cooper in her Yorkshire constituency. Does that appeal?
Well, you know, who knows? I never thought I'd go to prison, but I did. So who knows what may happen in the future?
So in my powers vested in you as interviewer, I'm going to give you 2 minutes face to face with the Prime Minister. What are you going to say to him? Have you been Keir Starmer's political prisoner?
Absolutely. And me and several other people. Like I said, it's important to remember that it wasn't just me. I, for some reason, seem to have had the most coverage, but there are people that are in equally awful situations that shouldn't be in there, and we should also be fighting for them and remembering them, and when they come out, give them the same support as what I'm getting from people as well. And I think with Keir Starmer, I think he needs to practice what he preaches. I think, you know, he's a human rights lawyer, so maybe he needs to look back at what people's human rights are, what freedom of speech means, and what the laws are in this country, if he's so, you know, bothered about sticking to the law and making the law work and not undermining the law. And I would also like to say to him that if he invested as much effort and money into housing, mental health, rehab, as he did to put in the likes of me in prison, the prisons would be empty.
I know you become passionate about prison reform, and someone like you with the Emma Bridgewater China wouldn't necessarily have had the experience. So is that one positive?
Absolutely. I'm the first one to say that I was that person that said, well, they're in prison. They did something to be there. They should be there. And then I met these women, and they were so kind to me, a lot of them, when I went in. You know, I'd never been to prison, and, you know, they look out. It sounds really silly, but sometimes in a women's prison, it really is like a community. Sometimes, of course, you get your bullies, you get your argy-bargy, it's hundreds of women living under one roof. But in the main, everybody, all the other women, this is my experience at Peterborough, want to see everyone else do well, and they will, you know, help one another and bring each other up and support one another. And, you know, when I started talking to these women and I heard their stories, you think, no wonder you have ended up in here. I'm surprised you didn't end up in here, you know, way before you did.
So it's made you a more compassionate person.
Definitely.
Yeah. Would you consider now taking legal action against the police for misrepresenting you and against the prison service?
I definitely think that's something that I will be looking into. Again, I don't want to say too much because I need to seek legal advice on that, but I do think the police were dishonest in what they released and what they said about me, and I will be, you know, holding them to account for that.
Finally, after Harry Connolly died, you fought like a lioness for years to get justice for your little boy, to get those charges of gross negligence, and you said, you know, I will bloody well prove I'm right and you were wrong, you said. Are you going to do that with this as well?
You bet I am. You won't keep me down. Like I said, to all the people that, you know, jeering that I was sent to prison, think it's a good thing, think it's funny, hope that they broke me while I was in there, well, I'm here to tell you that they didn't. And I hope that I can use my experience to now do good, to reform the system, to hopefully make people listen to me, that the system, because a lot of people that work in there just feel like they're banging their head against a brick wall. I don't want to see women, you know, being kept away from their children, sent to prison, and when they don't need to be there. You know, what a waste of everybody's time and money. That's not what we should be doing as a country. And yeah, I will continue to fight and really hope that I can, even if in a small difference, you know, help reform the system from somebody that's been there and lived it and survived to tell the tale.
Thank you.
Thank you.